It's time for
DodgerHeads.
high fly ball into right field. Dodgers have won it all in 2020. Shohei Ohtani, 50-50 club. Strikes him out. There's a drive. Shohei Ohtani. Freeman hits the ball. She is gone. Birthday party, Los Angeles. Your Dodgers have won the World Series.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Speigel, joined tonight by Bruce Kuntz, who is wearing his homage World Series champion sweatshirt that looks very comfortable over there. Bruce, it's good to see you. It's been a little while. I was gone. You've been busy with some other things, so nice to see you, my friend.
Yeah, we're full blown in the swing of the off season, so I'm glad that this is a regular Tuesday where we're able to hop on here and pretend like it's still season and everything has action going on still.
I love it. I love it. I do want to mention I've done a slight bit of rearranging myself. We've added some newspapers behind me. I'm going to move for a sec. So we've got 2020, 2024, and 2025 all represented behind me. There was a picture. The trivia question would be if anyone can remember what piece of art was behind me. I will give the slight hint that it was getting more and more outdated by the day. It was a piece of art from a few years ago that was like a up-and-coming prospects type piece that featured my guy Will Smith alongside Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin. So we're 1 for 3 on that still being relevant, but we're going with the newspaper clippings. The Yamamoto piece has officially arrived behind me over here. Freddie gets to stay on the wall, and then Kershaw holding the 2020 trophy. You know, it's just like you can't go wrong with that. So glad to be doing that. Glad to be with all of you, everyone joining us live via Facebook, via YouTube, via Twitter. Thank you for hopping in. It's rumor season. That's what we're going to be discussing tonight, asking, did the Dodgers miss out on the relief pitcher market with 3 of the biggest names already off? Do they need to be swimming in the Edwin Diaz qualifying offer waters? And then moving to trade conversations, a great piece by Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel over at ESPN, the top 25 plus 15 more guys who could get traded, teams that could fit, and likelihood of each of them getting traded. So lots to break down in that one. But Bruce, let's start with the relief pitcher market, and I'll ask you the simple question. Did the Dodgers whiff on the bullpen market? 3 of the guys, Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley, Raisel Iglesias, all off of the board. Williams signs for 3 years and $51 million with the Mets. Helsley, 2 for 28 with the Orioles. Iglesias, 1 for 16 back to the Braves. Let's start actually with this. What do you make of those numbers? Are there any of those contracts in particular that you kind of wish the Dodgers would have matched?
Yeah, I think Helsley is the one that I would have been okay with that. A 1+1 player option where if it goes wrong, then you're only on the hook for $28 million. I thought that was a fine deal for the Orioles. I would have been okay with that one. Devin Williams got more money than I expected him to get. So like I was thinking that he was going to be more than Helsley, but more in the 2-year guarantee kind of range.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to get $50 million plus. As soon as I saw the numbers there, I wasn't surprised at all that it wasn't to the Dodgers. So if out of the 3, I think Helsley is the one that when I saw the numbers, I was thinking, well, I would have been okay if the Dodgers did that instead.
Yeah, Iglesias wasn't my favorite. Devin Williams was the guy that I wanted. I'm with you. That number came in higher than I was expecting, $17 million per year when Helsley gets $14 million on a 2-year deal, as you mentioned, that, not even both years are necessarily guaranteed, although they kind of are guaranteed. Am I crazy for still thinking I would have done the Devin Williams trade? I just really like Devin Williams, and if I was going to bet on somebody that's not named Edwin Diaz, who we're going to talk about here in a second, I think it was going to be Devin Williams as a guy who I think could be a needle mover. So even with the 351, I still saw that number, Bruce, and was like, man, I kind of wish the Dodgers had been in that market.
I think that if you're going to weigh it as like, if you're going to guarantee the Dodgers were going to get one of the top free agent relievers and say, basically take that Devin Williams contract or take Edwin Diaz on a 5-year, $100 million plus qualifying offer, having to give a draft pick, then yeah, I'd say easily I'd go with the Devin Williams one. So my reaction immediately is that maybe the Dodgers aren't going to get the top free agent relief market, but there's still a lot of ways to get better with relievers, and that's the beauty of needing to improve your bullpen, especially for a team like the Dodgers. There's 1,000 different avenues you can go down, whether it's within your organization, converting starters, if it's waiver claims like the Dodgers have done so many times before. There's so many ways to find good relievers.
J-Law with the super chat says, how concerned are you that the Dodgers are losing out on players? Do you see any connection with Friedman being occupied helping the Lakers? I'll answer the second part first and come back to you on the first. There is no real connection with Friedman being occupied helping the Lakers. Him and Farhan Zaidi are like consultants to the Lakers, and I can assure you it is not occupying their time to such a degree that it is impacting the Dodgers. I think they're just guys that they're allowed to make phone calls to, and that they may be consulting at times, but I'm pretty confident that this is impacting their Dodgers job. So for you, Bruce, how concerned are you that the Dodgers missed out on these three guys? Because when we did our relief pitchers, I'll be honest, Williams and Housley, I believe, were like numbers 1 and 2 on my list of guys I wanted. I wasn't a huge Iglesias fan, but I look at the rest of the options. Diaz with the money and qualifying offer, and then Suarez, Fairbanks, Kenley Jansen stuff. Even the trade candidates we're going to talk about, there were no relief pitchers listed on the top 40 trade candidates except for one. So are you concerned that they've kind of missed out on improving this aspect of their team?
No, not really. I mean, it's not like your favorite thing. Obviously, you would have rather seen the Dodgers go get one of these guys, but we're still so early in the offseason that nothing's really going to rattle me. And especially being that it's not like that these players went to teams that I'm particularly worried about, in like Housley to the Orioles. It's not a matter of where he went. It's just that he's not a Dodger, so who cares? And then even with Williams to the Mets are contenders, but it's not like they're in the division. So it's not the end of the world at all. I think that there's still some really good options out there. Obviously, Edwin Diaz is the one that we're going to talk about the most, but there's a lot of strings attached there. I still am thinking that Robert Suarez is a guy that I'm interested in, and I think that's a good place to pivot to at this point. If it were up to me, he might be the first option to pivot to. Pete Fairbanks is still out there too, and he's been connected to the Dodgers a million times. So ultimately, we're too early in the offseason for anything to be disappointed for me, because there's too many ways to still wind up with a really good solution in the end.
Yeah, 300 with the super chat. Can't see Edwin Diaz, looking to Suarez, who you mentioned. 34-year-old right-handed pitcher is Suarez. 2.91 career ERA across 4 seasons. With some postseason experience. Sorry, I have my numbers written down in a way that I actually can't understand what I wrote. He's been good in the regular season and the postseason is the point. Will turn 35 this year. The velocity, though, was down this past year, still 98.5 miles an hour. Exit velocity numbers were not encouraging. Whiff rate, hard hit rate, not encouraging. Basically didn't have a ton elite last year, Bruce, other than his fastball velocity. His second most common pitch was a changeup, and the changeup got absolutely murdered last year, which I suppose if you were spinning this in a positive way, maybe the Dodgers can develop a secondary pitch that actually is more effective. But Suarez doesn't really move the needle to me. By the way, he's projected to get Devin Williams type money. Trade Rumors and The Athletic both had him at 3 and 48 and 3 for 54. So right in that Devin Williams money range. So talk me into why Robert Suarez is a guy that maybe I should be a little bit more excited about.
I think for me, part of it is I don't feel like he's going to get that money. And it's not to say that I know better than any of the people who are making those projections. I probably don't. But I look at everything that he's got, and I think that the contract Devin Williams just got is almost a good placer to go to the table with him and say, you're not getting this much, so let's go 2 years and $40 million and call it a day. And I think that he's that kind of like late inning option that you're not going to be signing and assuming you're turning over the 9th inning to him like you would with Edwin Diaz. But I think that he can contribute in a solid way. And yeah, I just think that he's been good enough with the Padres that he's a guy you can throw into the mix and have some sort of confidence in. And at this point, without Devin Williams on the market still, I think that you're okay with that. And then you can plug the holes through all the other ways. And it continues to stand out to me that I'm just not super worried about the Dodgers improving the bullpen, because I've seen a couple of people in the chat say it, and like so many of the guys the Dodgers have had through the years in the bullpen aren't guys that we would have been sitting here right now talking about signing the top of the market or any. They find ways. And so I'm also just kind of continuing to trust that that'll happen.
Yeah, the Evan Phillips types that the Dodgers have gone out and pulled off of waivers or acquired as sort of secondary pieces in the trade market. I've been on social media to say, I think if they do nothing in the bullpen, they'll actually be fine. And I know that's not awesome to hear when you're basically banking on guys to either repeat excellent performances from last year, guys like Jack Dreyer and Alex Vesia, as well as guys like Tanner Scott, maybe even Blake Treinen to bounce back to a form that they didn't display last year. But I do think the bullpen is maybe not as massive of a need, which maybe is why Suarez doesn't get me excited. It is a 2.91 career ERA, by the way, and a 2.45 career postseason ERA for Suarez.
I think that, like, when we're talking about some of these other candidates, and especially I think of Ryan Helsley, Williams even wasn't like really himself last year with the Yankees. It was a very up and down season. These are guys that are supposed to be better than they performed last year. And if that's the area the Dodgers were looking in and everybody wanted them to go get, like a project who has been a top closer before, like you said, that's already in-house in Tanner Scott. And even Blake Treinen sort of fits that bill too. He's a little older, so I'm not expecting him to bounce all the way back. But Tanner Scott is the guy that could be the offseason acquisition of, if they just get him back right, then they don't need any of these guys that are at the top of the market. And especially when you're talking about Edwin Diaz, like if they can get Tanner Scott right, then going for Edwin Diaz for that much money and giving up a draft pick would be big time overkill.
And let's talk Edwin Diaz real quick, because of the guys left, other than Suarez, it's Pete Fairbanks, who Rosenthal, Passan, all of these guys have mentioned his name and not connected the Dodgers to him in any way, shape, or form. Kenley Jansen, another name we mentioned. But Edwin Diaz is the needle mover that's still out there. And it has to be said, he has the qualifying offer attached to him, which would cost the Dodgers their second and fifth highest draft pick in next year's draft, as well as $1 million in international bonus pool money, because they are a tax-paying team. So the cost would be high, on top of the contract, which is projected at 4 years and about $83 million. This is one guy that the Athletic and trade rumors were $2 million apart. So I'll split the difference and call it 4 years and $83 million for the 31-year-old Edwin Diaz. It's an incredible cost just strictly on the qualifying offer piece. Your second highest draft pick, your fifth highest draft pick, and $1 million in international signing pool money. That's concerning. And yet, I can talk myself into this one, Bruce, because Edwin Diaz is really, really good. And I know we were saying the same thing about Tanner Scott last year, and I know Tanner Scott was a disaster, but man, 1.63 ERA, 0.87 whip, 99th percentile in whiff rate, strikeout rate, expected ERA, 94th percentile in barrel rate. Even in 2024, which was a down year, he was 100th percentile in strikeout rate, 98th percentile whiff rate, 98th percentile expected ERA, 97th percentile hard hit rate, 2.38 career postseason ERA as well. I know a $20 million plus deal for a 31-year-old reliever that comes with the qualify. I know all of that, Bruce. But if I'm trying to win a World Series in 2026, and I'm going for the three-peat, and I'm going for 4 in however many years, Edwin Diaz is a guy who genuinely moves the needle, and there aren't a ton of people left at any position that I think you can say that about.
I think you're absolutely right about it's a matter of whether you're willing to put some more eggs into next year's basket and however long he's under contract, especially at the beginning, to know that you're probably going to get this guy. The thing with him is, obviously we're talking about relievers. He already threw in a disclaimer if there was no reason to believe Tanner Scott was going to regress like he did. Yep. And then that's what happened. Relievers are just a really difficult thing to predict, and that's why they usually don't get these kind of contracts. But Edwin Diaz is the one sort of reliever that you can have a little more faith in. It's not to say that it's guaranteed, because no reliever is, but you can have a little bit more trust that he can still be this guy, because he's one of those freak of nature kind of relievers that he's got 2 pitches and you can't hit him. And that's something that you can usually trust a little bit in the back end of games. So I think that, especially if the projections are a little bit lower, like in the range that you're sort of talking about, if it finished in like the 80 million, like if it's under 100, then I would be a lot closer to being on board, because I think my worst nightmare here is a contract that is like his last one is what they talked about, that maybe he'd want a deal similar to the last one he signed of like 5 years, $100 million range. And that's where, if it goes south, you're really in hot water compared to 383 kind of thing. I think the Dodgers can work themselves out of that without it being too big of a hamper on the books if it were to go wrong.
Yeah, and that's the piece, right? Because of the second and fifth round draft picks, because of the $1 million bonus pool penalty, he's not really being offered on a free market. He comes with the consequences attached to it. What's interesting is if the Mets are going to be in, because if the Mets basically look at Edwin Diaz and say, hey, we just signed Devin Williams, we're good, and we're not actually really that interested in swimming in these waters, as the one team that would not have a penalty attached to signing Diaz, although they would be getting a draft pick if they don't sign Edwin Diaz. But to your point, like, instead of 5 and 100, would you take 4 for 80 if it cost you the qualifying offer penalty? Like, nobody wants to pay that penalty, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, would you trade the second round pick, the fifth round pick, and $1 million in bonus pool money a year from now for 31-year-old Edwin Diaz with 4 years remaining and $80 million? Like, I think the answer to your point is you'd at least consider it a lot more strongly.
Yeah, no, that I think the biggest part for me is you have to really be sure that Edwin Diaz is going to help your team next year, like in a really big way, because I feel like the Dodgers are one of those teams that it's really hard for them to give up those draft picks and the bonus pool money in a qualifying offer, especially knowing that they pick right at the back of every round in every single draft. And the Dodgers still manage to do really well with it. Like, we talk about it all the time, that their draft pick gets bumped back spots because of luxury tax, and they're picking at the end of the draft, and they still manage to have the best farm in baseball. But that is in part because they usually don't just throw picks away and stuff like this. Like, I would think they do it for players like Shohei Ohtani, for, you know, the guys that are like real needle movers, and you have to be really sure that Edwin Diaz is one of those guys. And I'm just not all the way sold that any reliever is going to be big enough, especially with a huge contract on top of it, to make that trade, as you described it, worth it for me.
Yeah, it's fair. And I think if there were other options, this is why I was such a Devin Williams fan, because I know Devin Williams isn't as good as Edwin Diaz, but I thought there was a gap between Williams and everyone else. And the prohibitive cost of that qualifying offer terrifies me about Edwin Diaz so much. And yet here we are, where you're either swimming in the Edwin Diaz waters or you're talking yourself into Suarez for 3 years and $50 million. I'm like, just give me Diaz for $30 million an extra year in the cost, because I think the gap between those two guys is so great. And if it's not Suarez, then it's like Fairbanks, it's Kenley Jansen. Again, there aren't a ton of relief arms out there, even, it sounds like, on the trade market right now. And so, well, on one hand, I'm totally comfortable with the Dodgers bullpen as is. I would also like to see them add one needle mover if possible.
I think that's the part that, for me, I'm not so worried about where the bullpen is at, to where I think that it's a necessary thing to go get one of these top guys. I don't think the Dodgers need to acquire one of the top 10 closers in baseball this offseason to feel like they have a good chance to win the World Series again. Totally. And I have a lot of faith that I think you do too, that the bullpen is going to be a lot better next year than it was this year, especially when we're talking about at the beginning of the season, the way the Dodgers have stacked themselves with starting pitching. River Ryan and Gavin Stone will be back alongside all the other guys that were there last year. They're going to have a choice at the beginning of the season. There's going to be some starters that either have to start the year on the injured list or they have to go to the bullpen for a little bit. And there might be a little bit of a shift that way. I haven't even mentioned like guys like Robleski that finished last year in the bullpen that you think of as starters, Roki Sasaki, that you hope that the Dodgers have enough healthy guys at the beginning of the season next year that they have to shift things around a bit, and it might get moved that way already. I saw someone just submitted a super chat right now talking about Edgardo Enriquez too, and I really love that point, because he's the guy that I'm hoping next year is a huge breakout if he gets consistent time in the bigs.
Yeah, Jay Teaser. My needle mover is Kyle Hurt, River Ryan, Justin Robleski, Edgardo Enriquez. My point in this is, as far as if you want to be optimistic about the Dodgers bullpen, which I'm happy to be, is these are guys who could, in theory, be in the mix for the opening day roster as far as bullpen arms. Bonda, Kasperius, Dreyer, Paul Gervais, who some people liked when he was acquired via trade, Brusdar Graterol, Edgardo Enriquez, Kyle Hurt, Will Klein, Ronan Kopp, River Ryan, potentially, Tanner Scott, Brock Stewart coming back injured, will be ready towards the end of the season, we hope. Blake Trinan, Alex Vesia, Justin Robleski as well. Like there's some high octane arms in there from the left and from the right. And if some things break the right way, you can see that being a competent and effective bullpen. This year, they didn't break that way. So I understand the people who are like, hey, remember that time we tried all that last year and it didn't work? Right. Fair as well. I love this from Scarecrow Super Chat. Appreciate the content. Just sign Edwin Diaz for the walkout song alone. I saw somebody on social media tag me and say like it'd be Gagne 2.0 with Gagne's walkout. So sign me up for that as well. 300 said I could see them taking a run at Hunter Harvey as one of these project guys. Gonna be honest, the name Hunter Harvey did not immediately jump off the screen to me. Pitched last year for the Royals, just 10 innings dealing with some injury stuff. Pitched for the Nationals in 2023. Split time, I believe it was between the Nationals and the Royals in 2024. And then spent 2025 with the Royals. Career 3.11 ERA. So, looking at his Savant page really quickly, obviously dating back to 2024 when he kind of had a full season, throws a hard fastball, chase rate, whiff rate, strikeout rate, walk rate, all encouraging. But hard hit rate, worst in baseball. Average exit velocity, not great. Expected ERA, expected batting average, bottom 10%. So it's a project, as you said, 300. So I would say, like, if you're giving me a project and you're telling me I'm starting out with a fastball that's like 98 miles an hour and above average chase rate, whiff rate, strikeout rate, I'll kind of take my chances with the rest of that stuff. The walk rate's good too. So it's not a command issue. So sure, why not? Like, I think there are guys out there. I keep saying this, he's an old friend alert, but like Yency Almonte, a couple years removed from shoulder surgery, like probably not getting a major league deal necessarily. Like, let's get Yency Almonte in here on a minor league deal and see if that sweeper fastball combo is ready to work again. So I think these are the type of moves, Bruce, that you were alluding to earlier.
Yeah, stack the non-roster invitee roster for spring training with as many minor league right-handed relievers as you can possibly find, and then just hope that a few of them really figure it out during spring training, and then you're golden.
Yeah, absolutely. Shelly said, where does Bobby Miller fit in? I'm not sure he does. I think he might fit in Oklahoma City this year, Bruce.
Yeah, he's in a really tough spot. I think that evaluating his future is kind of an impossible task right now, almost to the point that it feels like he's bound to be in a different organization, even for like almost nothing. It feels like that the rope for patience and having a 40-man spot is wearing thin, just because last year he was on the 40-man roster the whole year and was essentially useless to the big league team. And for a guy that's already been in the big leagues for like a full year plus, like he has, to then be in that spot, you don't get very much time to just be clogging up a spot like that. They already cut Nick Frosso during this offseason because he had kind of gotten to that point, even though he had never debuted. He was just clogging a spot, and they didn't see a future for him helping in the big leagues. If Bobby Miller can't be a guy that they can bring up to take a spot start or bring up into the bullpen to eat innings when they need it, when the rest of the bullpen's tired, he needs to be able to fill one of those two roles, or he's not going to be on the 40-man roster through all of next year.
Yeah, and again, 2 option years remaining according to Fangraphs, which that's helpful for his case. But I'm with you. It's like, do you think they just convert him to a reliever? I know they kind of did this and tried that experiment last year, but do you just give the whole offseason spring training and say this is the only chance we see of this thing working out is you as a reliever?
I don't know. I think that I'm inclined to say no, just because it feels like it's such a throwing in the cards. But I think that I even felt that way when they made that move last year, that it was very disappointing to me, just because I still remember like how much promise he had, and everybody does. But it just stinks that we're in a point now where his future is so cloudy and impossible to predict that they're just throwing up their shoulders and saying, let's try to make a guy that not very long ago we were talking about as the next Walker Buehler, like a star starting pitcher for years into the future. And all of a sudden we don't even know if he can be a big league pitcher in the bullpen. Maybe they just move him there and, like you said, give him a full offseason, try and figure it out. But it feels like even if you do that and he becomes viable-ish in the bullpen, it still feels like that there's a failure there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You obviously hope for the best, not only for the person, but if just for the Dodgers organization, best case scenario is this guy figures something out and is able to offer value to the Dodgers either internally or as a trade piece that redeems a little bit of his value. At this point, it's hard to see that path forward, but crazier things have happened. Guys have had terrible seasons. I think about Gavin Stone a couple of years ago, has a really bad season, a really hard first taste of the major leagues, and then goes back down to AAA, not great, is able to bounce back the next year. I'm not saying Gavin Stone and Bobby Miller are the same two human beings when it comes to the mental side of the game, but right. I think we've seen guys kind of just have the light bulb go off at some point, Bruce. It clicks, and all of a sudden they're back to where they were two or 3 years prior.
It would be great if something like that happened. And Miller has always had the kind of stuff that you hope for something like that with the high octane fastball. He's always had good secondaries. And I think that's part of what's been so confusing about him is that it hasn't really felt like that there's a reason for it to be as bad as it got. But exactly. I think that's also a reason to continually be concerned. And it's just hard to, when we have no idea really what's wrong from the outside. I think that's the part that concerns me the most, because with most guys that go south like that, we can have, as an outside observer, some kind of idea of exactly whether it's that his changeup's getting hit hard or he's not throwing strikes, whatever. Bobby Miller, it's just, I have no idea. And I don't know if the Dodgers do either, which is really where you can't have a lot of optimism for things turning around.
For sure. Let's switch gears. Let's talk trade candidates. We talked some bullpen arms that might be available via free agency. A really interesting piece put out today by ESPN, Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel. The top 25 players in Major League Baseball who could be traded, as well as 15 more honorable mention names. Each guy had a little bit of a breakdown, as well as the percent chances that Passan and McDaniel believe these players could be traded and teams who could be a good fit. So some fascinating names. It starts at the top with Tarek Skubal, who they say 10% chance to be traded. For context, Ketel Marte was on this list, Byron Buxton, Jarren Duran, Kwan, Donovan, Abreu, all names that could potentially make sense for the Dodgers. I'm going to get into some of these on an individual and specific basis, Bruce. But let me start by asking you, what surprised you or jumped out to you the most when you looked at this list from Passan and McDaniel?
I think the biggest thing is some of those names that you just mentioned. The Dodgers aren't very connected, and the whole writing about some of those guys that we've been talking about ever since the offseason began on our Dodger show, it doesn't seem like that the perception, at least from the ESPN guys that wrote this article, is that the Dodgers are very involved at all. Like, these are some of the main guys that from my Dodger-centric viewpoint, I've been thinking like the Dodgers have to be the team that makes the most sense. And guys like Buxton and Kwan and Duran, they're not even mentioned in this article as Dodger fits, which surprised me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Byron Buxton, 35% trade chance. Dodgers not listed among the teams as a team fit. Duran and Abreu from the Red Sox, 50% likelihood that one of those guys gets traded. Dodgers not listed as a fit. Even Steven Kwan, the guy that they've allegedly tried to trade for before, only at 25%, which I'm going to get to. But again, Dodgers not listed as a fit. So I think that was surprising to me as well. Let's go through some of these. Skubal, I mentioned 10%. The next name on the list, I believe it was maybe second, third, fourth, somewhere in that range, was Ketel Marte. 40% likelihood the Diamondbacks move him. Holy smokes, Ketel Marte would be sweet in a Dodgers uniform. The Diamondbacks would never do that, though, right, Bruce? They wouldn't trade him to the Dodgers, would they?
Yeah, I hate to break it. I don't think that would ever happen.
If hypothetically, the Diamondbacks called the Dodgers and said, we're willing to listen, would Marte be a guy that's incredibly high on your list? One of the top 15 players in baseball in WAR every single year, plays second base, which is a position that isn't exactly like nailed down by anybody, and has a pretty affordable contract as well.
Yeah, I think that he would be a guy that you'd be willing to give up a whole lot for. When we've talked about some of the guys that the Dodger outfield farm is stacked with these top prospects, like he's a guy that you get rid of some of the extra top guys and the farm system will look worse and you'll be feeling a lot better as a complete organization if you get someone like that. I'd be a tiny bit, I'd at least like ask a couple questions from the D-backs about whatever the heck was going on with the locker room stuff with him, about that whole situation last year. And like, I think that it's sort of similar to Duran. I'm not as concerned about like the off the field stuff as I am with Duran, because it seems like he's just hated in Boston. But for the D-backs, Marte's as good of a player that you don't want to trade a guy like that on as good a contract as he has. So I'd like be inquisitive to say, why is it exactly that you want him gone? But then I'd be able to get past that pretty fast, I think, and say, okay, open book, take the prospect you want because we'd love that guy.
I'm skipping over a bunch of pitchers, corner infielders, guys that the Dodgers aren't going to be connected to on this list. But Buxton is the next name that I jotted down for a couple of reasons. Two things were encouraging to me. The first was, quote, willing to waive his no trade clause and not just for Atlanta. And then a 35% chance of him being traded. Now, that may not seem high to a lot of people, but I think 35 is a lot higher than the number I would have come up with in my head based on the fact that just last year at the trade deadline, Buxton was like, I'm good. I'm retiring here as a Minnesota Twin. Now, you mentioned Dodgers not listed among the 5 or 6 teams that were in the team fit category here. But were you surprised to see the 35% number as likelihood that Buxton could be traded?
Yeah, that was the part that stood out to me too, because I've been waiting for info to find out whether he's willing to waive the no trade clause, because that seemed like the biggest part of whether he would actually be a possibility to move. And this article, it seemed to clearly lay out that he is willing to move. So if that is true and that he is okay with going somewhere other than Atlanta and not staying in Minnesota, seems like the Dodgers are a pretty great pitch for anybody to be willing to waive their no trade clause. And he's been the guy that ever since it was even mentioned that he might be interested in finding a new home, he's been the main target for me that of all the realistic options, not named Ketel Marte. He's my favorite hitter to try and target and find a way to get him on that contract with the upside that he has. I think it's a perfect fit.
You and me both having him at the top of the list. A couple more names on here. Duran and Abreu of the Red Sox I mentioned. Surprising to me, simply that Abreu's likelihood to be traded in McDaniel's and Passan's eyes is equal to Duran's. Both these guys are listed at 50%. I don't think both of them would ultimately get traded. And it's highly possible that Abreu is just going to net them a lot more than Duran. But the fact that Abreu is, in theory, as tradable to them as Duran was surprising.
I think my guess with that was that they just put 50 and 50 together to make 100% to say one of those two guys is getting moved, but not both of them. Because it feels like the Red Sox absolutely have to move one of them. But I'm just not sure who they're going to move yet. Both of them are obviously targets that would make some sense for the Dodgers, but that's another extension of like we're talking about that. I was very surprised to not see the Dodgers even as like the last team of could make sense, even if you don't write about them. In what world do those guys not at least have some connection to the Dodgers? I feel like that it makes too much sense for them not to be mentioned.
Duran obviously has some off the field questions and concerns, but has been seemingly the better player and can play center field. Abreu, a corner outfielder who's been very, very good as well. Do you have Abreu because of the lack of off field concerns? Would Abreu be more appealing to you than Duran?
Yeah, I think so. And Abreu also, we talk about like Duran can play center field, but Abreu is the better outfielder. Like he's a Gold Glover in right field, and having that glove would be awesome. They're both platoon guys, so it's not like that one of them are a more suitable everyday player. You're going to need Alex Call to be the right-handed bat for both of them probably. But they're both really interesting players. Duran is more of the, like the article says, like the good, not great kind of hitter. Like I wouldn't trade for him and expect to be able to slot him into like the 4 or 5 spot in the order against righties or anything like that. But he'd be a really solid guy in the, 6-ish part of the lineup, and then know that you're getting defense in right field that is far and far superior to what we've been seeing lately.
Yeah. Low bar for sure. Last one before we get to the name the Dodgers are connected to. The last name they're not is Steven Kwan. And the two things that surprised me were, we've mentioned Dodgers not listed, but only 25% chance. This is a guy that it seemed like everyone assumed was going to be traded at the deadline. And then when he wasn't, everybody has seemingly assumed would be traded at some point. And now they're saying, well, the Guardians could actually go and win the division based on how things are shaping up. Are they really going to trade Kwan? So for him to be 25% less than Buxton, less than Duran, less than Abreu, less than Brendan Donovan, who we're going to talk about, we don't have to have a long discussion about it. It just surprised me to see such a low number next to Steven Kwan's name.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought that especially when it sounded like the Dodgers were very, very close to getting that done at the deadline last year, it seems like that would have been natural to reopen those negotiations and be close. But if that article is to be believed, then it sounds like it's not as close as we thought.
Okay, the name the Dodgers were connected to, literally the only team I believe they were listed as a fit, maybe Skubal. I think they were listed as a fit for Skubal. But the only other name was Brendan Donovan. And here's the good news for fans that are looking for some action. Donovan also, I think, maybe had the highest likelihood of being traded of any player on this list at 75%. The Dodgers were listed first on the teams who could be interested. You mentioned right before we came on, Bruce, that the more you have thought about Brendan Donovan after seeing him on a list like this, connected to the Dodgers, the more excited you get about a guy who can play second, who can play third, and also who can play the corner outfield spot. So talk to me what you like. Tell me what you like about Donovan so much.
I think the thing that intrigues me is how much he feels like a Dodger target with some of the guys that they've gotten over the years, like the ability to play second base, play left field when they need it. He can move around. He's also just like a very sneaky, productive player. And it really reminds me of what Tommy Edman's done.
He's literally a Tommy Edman clone. When you look at him on paper, it's like, oh, a utility guy from the Cardinals who plays all these weird positions, doesn't hit for a ton of power, doesn't strike, like kind of does all the little things as a baseball player from the Cardinals. You're like, wait, is this Tommy Edman? Are they just trading for him again?
Right. He looks like the guy that's the glue that when the Dodgers have a clear hole, then he can slide around wherever. I like the idea of trading for him, especially because it wouldn't be a block for any of the prospects. Like you're trading for him as a guy that you can find a lot of ways moving through the rest of his tenure before he hits free agency to contribute to the team. And he doesn't have to necessarily block anybody at any point. So that seems like the safest option in terms of you can trust that if he plays nearly every day, then he's going to be a 2.5 to 3 WAR kind of player near the bottom of the lineup, same as it's been with Edman. But everybody with the Dodgers has loved Tommy Edman since he arrived. So that's a really positive comp to be able to throw on a guy to say that he could fill out the roster in that way. I think Donovan's a really intriguing player if they don't have any of these other bigger name and more flashy options that are just going to be in the outfield. Donovan's the guy you can go get and keep your options open in a lot of different ways.
And this may be surprising to people, maybe not if you watch a show and you're one of the people that believes the lie that I'm a Tommy Edman hater. But when I compare Donovan to Edman, they're different in this way. Brendan Donovan's actually a much better offensive player than Tommy Edman is. I think Tommy Edman is a much better defensive player. I think Brendan Donovan can competently play 2 or 3 positions. I think Tommy Edman is one of the best second basemen in baseball defensively and is a very good center fielder. However, Tommy Edman, as I said last year, that made a lot of people mad, is kind of like a league average offensive player, whereas Brendan Donovan has never been below a 115 weighted runs created plus in 4 major league seasons. He's 119 for his career. He's not a power guy similar to Tommy Edman, but one of the biggest differences is he actually walks. He walks at 8% of the time. Tommy Edman basically never walks. So I'm with you. Brendan Donovan doesn't feel super sexy in a lot of ways. It's not like, oh, Byron Buxton, another guy who's going up on the side of the wall at Dodger Stadium, but he just makes a ton of sense. I think it was Daniel who had him on his offseason master plan, but you could see him playing corner outfield this year. He hits left-handed. You could see him filling in at second base. You could see him potentially being, I don't want to say long-term because I think he's got 2 years left on his deal, but he could be the third baseman for a year after Max Muncy leaves, if Max Muncy leaves when his contract ends. You could just see him kind of plugging all these holes. And as we've said, he's been incredibly consistent offensively. He's not going to hit for a ton of power, but he's going to hit 270. He's going to walk at a decent clip. He's going to hit 10 home runs. And the total package of all of that is incredibly valuable. Obviously, you've got to figure out what the cost is going to be to go acquire him, but this doesn't feel like a guy who's going to cost even as much as an Abreu or a Duran. So it may not be as sexy as Abreu or Duran, and yet at the end of the day, from a quote unquote value added to the team, he might be the highest value add guy they could find.
I totally agree. I think over a guy like Duran, I think there's absolutely a world that Donovan would benefit the roster more for a price that wouldn't be as high. And the flexibility that he brings, like you said, I think that the Edman comp is the easy one, but you hit it on the head that he's a much better offensive player. And he's a guy that for a lot of teams would be a leadoff hitter and top of the lineup or middle of the lineup. And for Donovan, he'd be lineup depth that would be very, very good for the Dodgers. So yeah, he's a guy that if the Cardinals really want to move him, I want to it wouldn't be that the price would be low by any stretch. So it would still hurt to see if that were to happen, like whoever goes back, it would sting, but it wouldn't be a debilitating price to pay to make your team quite a bit better.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the other options, like I know there's some people that keep mentioning like Steven Kwan's name, for example. In many ways, Brendan Donovan is just like a better offensive version of Steven Kwan. Now, Steven Kwan, again, a better defensive player. But Donovan's going to, I mean, last year, for example, he hits 287, 353 on base percentage. So everyone talks about a guy like Kwan or a guy like, somebody that can go at the bottom of the lineup, hit for average, take some walks. You look at Brendan Donovan, and it feels disrespectful if you're talking about a team other than the Dodgers to talk about plugging a guy into the number 9 slot. But a guy like Brendan Donovan could make a ton of sense there. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. He hit he's a 282 career hitter with a 9% career walk rate. He doesn't swing and miss. Like, I think you just stack all these things together. He's sort of the prototypical guy that you would want down there at the bottom of the lineup to get on base, to turn the lineup over so that Shohei Ohtani isn't hitting 45 solo home runs next year. And again, he's probably better than in the 9 spot, but I'm just saying he's like a souped up version of all of the guys we've penciled into that number 9 spot.
Yeah, there were a lot of times even last year where the depth of the lineup never felt great. And so he's a guy that really extends your run of hitters that you feel confident in up there, even if he's hitting in the 6th spot or, the 6 through 8 range in the lineup. You still feel really good with him up there. And it's like you're adding an extra buffer in the bottom of the lineup before you get to the guys that you're just waiting to get their at-bats done with before Ohtani gets back up there.
Yeah, absolutely. 5.75 was the number that Donovan got last year. 2.85 was the number he got last year in arbitration. The estimate this year is 5.75. He would have one more arbitration year after that. So obviously affordable, super cheap on that side of things as well. So a couple other names I want to throw out there. Those were all the names on the top 25 list that I thought were interesting. There were 15 more names down below. There were 3 that I'll highlight. One is the only relief pitcher on this list, Jojo Romero of the Cardinals. I was like, hey, relief pitcher, may be interesting. Then I saw he pitches with his left hand, and I said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need another left-handed reliever, although he is very good. But there were 2 other outfielders on this list, Bruce, and you are a prospect guy, so I imagine at least one of these guys is going to be particularly interesting for you, and the other one, maybe not so much a prospect, but a late bloomer who has kind of developed. The first name on this list, it shocked me because I was like, wait a minute, am I reading this name right? And that's Jason Dominguez of the Yankees. He's 22, and yet Passan and McDaniel list him on a list of 40 of the best players who could get traded. This name didn't come with a percentage chance or linked teams, but he's an outfielder. He's 22, hard hit rate, sprint speed, arm strength, all very good. League average offensive player. Did I mention he's 22 years old? Keep that in mind. Better from the left-handed side as a switch hitter. The bad news is not a ton of great underlying metrics other than the ones that I just mentioned. Whiff rate, chase rate, barrel rate, all bad. 2nd percentile outs above average defensively, although the prospect reports always had him as a pretty good fielder. So I don't know what it would cost to go get him from the Yankees. I just was shocked his name was on this list. Would you make phone calls on Jason Dominguez to at least get a sense of the cost? Do you think there's a fit here at all?
I'd get a sense of the cost, sure, but I think that there's already been like the shine is off of him a little bit for me, because he hasn't really become the player that it felt like he was on a trajectory to be. And like you said, there's a lot of things about the profile that are pretty concerning, not only in what he can bring on offense, but also the defense has been pretty ugly. I think the Yankees will trade him if they like sign Kyle Tucker or they bring back Bellinger and he's like the odd man out. And I think that kind of answers your question, and that they are perfectly willing to have him not be part of their group. So I think that in some ways I would avoid it a little more because of the name value. Like I think that other teams might fall for that a little bit more than I would hope that the Dodgers would. That said, like you said, that there still are some really good things, like the exit velocities have been good, and he's a supremely talented baseball player, but a lot of the things underneath all that shine on the top have really been ugly so far in his big league tenure. And I think the Yankees would want a lot back for him, just because we are talking about the former super prospect with things to like, and he's 22 and you hope that he gets better, but I wouldn't want to pay the probable premium that would cost just to bank on and hope that he can continue to develop when there are a lot of red flags.
It's so interesting, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. This guy's the same age as Mike Sirota, who hasn't played above AA. So it's so hard for my small pea brain, Bruce, to compute. Like, how do you compare the value of Mike Sirota to a guy like this who has, yes, struggled, but like is struggling 2.5 levels above where Sirota is at? And Sirota's not like the number one prospect in Major League Baseball. I'm just using him as a comp because he's the one of the 4 Dodgers outfield prospects who went to college and has graduated and is now there. So that's the hard part for me is I understand all the concerns. I guess I'm asking you, how many of those can you wipe from your brain by reminding yourself that this is a 22-year-old kid that we're talking about?
Not very many, because I think that if you're talking about like Jason Dominguez would cost, the cost would be fairly substantial. So I'd rather go pay a fairly substantial price for a guy who isn't 22 and pay for the production on the field rather than pay for the age. I think that's what it comes down to for me.
One other name that was on this list that Ken Rosenthal also mentioned was a Houston Astro, Jake Meyers. 2.5 wins above replacement last year, kind of a breakout offensive season at age 29. When I say breakout offensive season, 107 weighted runs created plus, so slightly above average offensively. It seems like this is a guy who basically gave up on trying to hit home runs. He hit 3 in 380 at bats last year, but as a result, his batting average ticked up 73 points. His strikeout rate dropped by 5%. His walk rate went up 1%. And oh, by the way, he's one of, if not the best defensive center fielders in all of Major League Baseball. 96th percentile, outs above average last year, has basically been in the top 5% every single year. 2 years of team control. Ken Rosenthal mentions that Houston is looking for controllable starting pitching, potentially open to moving Jake Meyers as a result. When I look at him compared to Steven Kwan, 20 points higher batting average, 24-point higher on base percentage, 1 point lower slugging percentage, but definitely plays center field and plays it at an elite level. It's a 1-year breakout for a guy who's 29. I wouldn't necessarily always put a ton of stock in that, but he feels like the type where I've talked about like a Harrison Bader type, where at least I know I'm getting great defense in center field. That would be Jake Meyers. Like, you trade for him, you hope the offensive stuff is real, that he can be an average to slightly above average offensive player. And at the very least, you're getting one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. Are you interested in that profile at all?
I am a little bit. I think he's like a break in case of emergency if every other option just falls through and they're left saying we really need an outfielder that might actually be able to play most days. I think he's a guy that you could pursue. I would be very, very dependent on what the cost is, because when they say they want controllable starting pitching, does that mean you go to the table and they say, we'll give you Jake Meyers for Justin Robleski? And then you're like, eh. So it's very,
ask where the line is. Like, if the cost is Jackson Ferris, would you do it?
I probably not, just because I would want to see a little bit more from the bat, and I want to get back a guy that I trust a little better to give up a starter that's about to get to the big leagues with his full 6 years ahead of him. But I'd think about it. I just would hope to hold on to a guy like Ferris for a little bit of a bigger ticket.
Yeah, it's tough because Robleski is interesting as a guy that some Dodgers fans are projecting as like, is he ever going to be a starter again for this organization? So that's why I'm trying to gauge where the cost is here. Again, elite defensive center fielder, and yet you have to trade for him. So finding the prices for these guys is often the hardest part.
Yeah, I'd rather trade Ferris than Robleski by a little bit, but I would probably rather trade either of those guys for Jake Meyers.
Yeah, fair. So if given the choice, you would hold on to Robleski and Ferris, and you would trot out there the Alex Call, Ryan Ward platoon?
Oh my gosh. Well, I I'd need to look into it a little bit more, because I have a gut feeling that the reaction from, like, especially if you ask somebody on the Astros side, they'd say, oh, Robleski's just a starting point. So I think that we might be looking at it with Dodger colored glasses here a little bit, and I'd want to look into it a little deeper than I have to really have a point there. My hope is that the Dodgers get an option that I like better, so we don't have to think about something like that.
So let me ask you this. We're going to get to questions here in just a second, so go ahead and start filling the chat with all caps questions. We talked bullpen and we talked outfield. Give me like the name in each of those categories who is to some degree gettable either via trade or free agency or whatever, that would be at a reasonable cost, the guy at the top of your list?
In each category of relief, outfield.
Relief and let's just say one reliever, one position player. I think I know the position player. It sounds like you're a Brendan Donovan guy at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, Brendan Donovan is the position player. The reliever is the really hard one, because I don't really love any of the options. Edwin Diaz is obviously the best.
And you could say none. You could say stay put. I would stay put if these are my options at these prices.
Yeah, the stay put is not something that I'm afraid of, because I think there really is a lot of in organization talent that I just think the Dodgers have had a trademark before that they don't go and do the huge stuff on the relief market, and it's always worked out. And then last year was the one year they actually did go get the best guy available, and it completely backfired. So I think that that's a lesson in that throwing the money at the top of the relief market is not the solution that it might feel like it is in the moment.
Okay, Scooter Booter says, do you have nostalgia goggles wanting Bellinger back? I definitely do not want him back. His 21-22 seasons gave me bad memories, and I'm worried he would go back to his old habits. Bruce, are you interested in Cody Bellinger?
Not really. He would have to take like a short-term kind of like prove it kind of thing. That I don't want to give him a 5 or 6 year deal at all, like it seems like he's going to get.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Dodgers have been connected to him. I just don't see it. Like I understand some of the things that he can do well. The offensive profile terrifies me, and yeah, I'm good on that front.
Like if you're talking about just add him to the lineup right now, sure, because he's not a bad player, but with the contract that he's going to get, it doesn't seem like a net positive.
Noisy Ninja asked, did Will Klein solidify his spot in the Dodgers bullpen?
This is like the most interesting question ever, because it always, when you have these postseason heroes, you wonder, well, what the heck is that going to mean for next year? I think it's going to mean he's going to have a position battle in spring training to not get optioned. And I think he absolutely could win that position battle, but the Dodgers aren't going to go into spring training assuming that he's going to be on the opening day roster, I don't think.
The good news for Klein is that unlike Brent Honeywell a year before, is he actually can be optioned to the minor leagues. So yeah. I'm really confident that Will Klein is going to be a Dodger for the next 12 months. How much he actually is contributing at the major league level, TBD.
I thought you were going a different direction with that and saying that Will Klein has stuff that's a lot more projectable. And I loved Brent Honeywell. I'm not trying to be a Brent Honeywell hater, but there's a reason he got non-tendered and Klein is still here. Because Will Klein genuinely has the stuff to hope for a really bright future for him. I'm just not sure if it's like immediate that he's going to be like, he's not going to be a back end of the bullpen guy on opening day.
Yoshi asks, is there any chance they stay put and try Dalton Rushing in left field? Would be a shame if he stays as a backup catcher. They've tried this before in the minor leagues 2 years ago. Last year, they came into camp and said, we're not doing that. He's a catcher full time. They've moved on from Ben Rortvedt. Is there any chance they try the Rushing outfield experiment again, Bruce?
I think that if he's still on the team in spring training, I think you kind of have to at least give it a shot, especially if you're just running it back with the same guys that they have now. You need it to be some kind of position battle out there, and I think it would be Rushing and Ward in left field to try and take the right-handed pitching at-bats out there. I don't think that, like I'm saying, if they keep Rushing in the organization, I don't think that it would be a smart idea to just go in saying he's the backup catcher strictly, because he's just got too much value. If that's what you're going to do after he's already been in the big leagues a full year, either trade him or find a way to get him on the field more, even if it's as a backup catcher and some innings in left field. I think you could do that, but you just can't go in and say he's going to be Austin Barnes now for a guy as talented and valuable as he is.
Hey, some people think that's a huge compliment to become Austin Barnes, so keep that in mind.
I mean it strictly in the playability and how often he's on the field making an impact factor.
I remember talking to Alex Friedman, who's the play-by-play guy for Oklahoma City, a couple of years ago, and I feel like I remember the reports of Dalton Rushing in the outfield were like not atrocious. I'm not saying they were good, but they were like, yeah, I mean, he's athletic. Like, he hasn't played the position, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, please never again. You know, we're talking about Ryan Ward, like the bar, Teoscar Hernandez. The bar is very low for what we are willing to tolerate in the corners.
I think that's the key. Is I agree with you that I remember it not being a travesty, but I've also seen and heard things that it was. So it seems like that there's conflicting reports there. But he's the guy that is athletic enough that I would hope with a full offseason, if they decide that that's where they want to go, to work on it, and then all of spring training to try and get better. It's not like that he doesn't have the athleticism to be good enough out there to be passable. Like you said, when we're talking about the level of outfield defense we're talking about, it's not a huge threshold to reach. And that's not something that's just a guarantee. We've seen it many times before. Gavin Lux was a great athlete. He was terrible in the outfield. Miguel Vargas was the same thing. There was no reason that he should have been as bad in left field as he was. So it's not ever a guarantee that you can just stick a guy in left field and assume it'll be fine. But it's something that you at least try and can have some kind of like a maybe 75% chance that it won't be terrible.
75% chance it won't be terrible. I love it. Guy, any interest in Lars Nootbaar if he's made available? Do you want to just trade for the entire Cardinals roster? Should we just swap places with all their best players?
The Los Angeles Cardinals coming up soon. Nootbaar regressed a little bit last year, so I'm not sure if they'd go there, but he was the guy that before kind of had the Dodger mold of like a lot of walks and all of that. I don't think that that's an option that makes sense immediately, though.
Yeah, looking 22, 23, 24, well above average offensively, like a 115 to 120 kind of weighted runs created plus guy, left-handed hitting, outfield. You sort of look at all those boxes and it's like, oh, that's intriguing. Even some of the underlying metrics this past year, the external numbers were not good. The OPS dropped almost 70 points, but hard hit rate, chase rate, whiff rates, bat speed, exit velocity, all those numbers were still pretty good. So you could talk me into it. I think Brendan Donovan's probably the more likely, but I don't think there's room for trading for both of these guys necessarily. But I mean, heck, why not just get all these guys? Get more lefties everywhere. Donovan can kind of be a utility guy. Nootbaar can start in the outfield, and somebody will get hurt, and they'll figure it out from there. You know?
Yeah, make it like the pitching side of things where they have to limit each position player to 110 games a year.
Exactly. I don't set Blexa. Bexel. Sorry. I hate these YouTube usernames. Do you want Walker Buehler back as a closer, Bruce?
I'm good.
Bruce said he's good. Bruce said Walker Buehler's really good as a closer. We all just heard it there. That was amazing. Smile 51. At this point, with everyone who's left, do you want to see us sign an outfielder or a relief pitcher first to ease the panic? I want to see a needle mover. The only relief pitcher that's a needle mover they can sign is Edwin Diaz. The only outfielder, in my opinion, they can sign who's a needle mover is Kyle Tucker. So I think it's going to be a trade, which Fabian Ardaya said on our show a few weeks ago. But outfielder or relief pitcher, which would ease your panic a little bit more, Bruce?
Outfield easily, because like I already talked about, I think the relief core is in a place where if they didn't do anything, I wouldn't be thrilled, but I wouldn't be terrified either. The outfield is where I really want to see them address the outfield this offseason, and I think they will. That's a much bigger priority for me than the relievers.
Here's a Zach. Sign a reliever first because you know they're going to go and trade an outfielder at some point anyway. So if they go for the reliever, then you know for sure they're getting both. How about that, Bruce?
That market has definitely been moving faster.
Victor wants to know, Bruce, which Dodgers prospects will get the call-up this season?
This is a general question. I'll say that we already mentioned Jackson Ferris is the guy that I'm looking at after a full year in AA, where it was kind of like up and down at the beginning, and he locked it in by the end and finished fairly strong. I think that he's going to make his debut next year because the Dodgers haven't usually, with guys, once they get to AAA, they kind of are like, okay, we're not just going to have you rot in the Pacific Coast League. So once they're there, usually they're willing to bring guys up for spot starts at least. So I'm hoping that he continues on his current trajectory, maybe even takes a step forward this offseason and can be a guy that at some point mid-season last year could be, even if it's like spot starts, I think that he'll be in LA at some point.
There you go. Joseph asks, what do you think about these relievers for spring training invites? Jose Rodriguez in Oklahoma City. The stuff is great. And then Gregory Soto for the Mariners. It's hard to project other guys, but Rodriguez, somebody they could have added to the 40-man roster, still could get taken in the Rule 5 draft. So worth pointing out.
That's the big thing for me. I think Rodriguez is gone. I don't think he's going to be in the organization at all. I think that this offseason was their chance to keep him, and they chose not to. I also thought that with Ryan Ward last year, and he didn't get taken. The Rule 5 draft is a very confusing thing, but I think he seems like a guy that might even be in one of the first guys taken in the Rule 5 draft because he If I were another team looking at a pitcher that you could just stick in the bullpen, and he's got all the lankiness, all the funky arm slot, the changeup is really good, multiple pitches. Like, he seems like an easy flyer to just take and see if it works. In worst case, you send him right back the same way the Angels did with Garrett McDaniels last year. He's back with the Dodgers now. I don't think Rodriguez is going to be a Dodger during spring training next year. And like I said, with McDaniels, it doesn't mean that he couldn't eventually make his way back, but the action of not protecting him this offseason felt to me like they were choosing that they were okay with him being taken.
Yeah. Back-to-back says, what do you make of the struggles of the lineup in the postseason? Do you think a bat is needed?
Yeah, that's where I want the outfield to be addressed, or theoretically second base too, but I think the outfield is where all the options are. The lineup right now has one hole missing, and I think that's where getting a corner outfielder, at least somebody that you can then shift around the cards to cover the corner outfield, is something that I would like to see them do.
And I've said before, I'd love to see some depth on the roster as well. I'd love to see one or two guys off the bench that you don't kind of plug your nose for a little bit when you see them come up in the lineup. Maybe Miguel Rojas can still be that guy. Kike Hernandez has been really bad in the regular season for his entire career, although I love Kike Hernandez. Dalton Rushing, if he takes a step forward offensively, that would play a huge role in this. And so, and then of course, Alex Call, Ryan Ward types, but I would just love to see some depth in that group. Smile51 says, do we see one of our outfield prospects in AAA this upcoming year? What do you think? Sirota, Quintero? I mean, I guess you will see one of our outfield prospects. It just might not be one of the top four guys, right? It could be Tibbs or Ehrman. I always forget. What's the other guy they Eberhard?
Oh, yeah, Earhart.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who do you think, what outfield prospects are in AAA this year?
Those two guys are the first ones that'll get there, and Tibbs and Earhart. I think Tibbs could open the year in AAA, probably more likely to go back to Tulsa. He wasn't there super long, but I think it's certainly a possibility he hits straight up to Oklahoma City. Tibbs has the polish, so like I think he moves a little bit quicker up, and he's not that far away from being a platoon ready big leaguer. But I think that for the younger guys that we're talking about, like the upper echelon, Quintero is going to start. Quintero's not going to be in AAA. DePaula and Hope are both probably not too. They moved those two guys very, very slowly last year, and it took them a long time to even get to AA, longer than I expected. So unless they come out and just completely blow AA out of the water, where there's no reason at all to hold them down, they're going to slow play those guys for sure.
So all four of those guys were basically finished at AA, right?
No, that's why I was hesitating. Quintero only got called up to high A midway through the year. So I'm expecting Quintero to open up in high A again, because he's like one step further down the development ladder compared to those guys. I was just double checking. Yeah, Quintero only played 32 games in high A last year. So okay. I'm expecting him to be in Great Lakes. He's like on where Hope and DePaula were last year entering the season, where they wound up playing the majority of the year in high A. That's where Quintero's at. So he's like one step down the ladder. Hope and DePaula will both be in Tulsa to open the year, and I think that's where they play the majority, if not the entire season, in AA.
And Sirota, you think in AA as well?
Yeah, I hope that Sirota is healthy. I still haven't heard anything about his knee. I was crossing my fingers that he was going to be able to be healthy and play in the fall league, and that didn't happen. So the fact that I haven't heard anything there, I can't really say exactly what his situation is. But if he is healthy, then hopefully AA to open the year, if not like a quick high A and then go straight up. He does not have very much time under his belt as a professional. That's the thing. Like, Sirota is older, so he can move faster, but he's like, in terms of actual professional innings, he's pretty low. So they might have to go a little bit slower there too, just to be careful.
Eric says, sorry for a non-baseball question. What bowl game do you think the Oregon Ducks will be playing in? You don't have to apologize for Oregon Ducks questions on this. It's the playoffs, so the Ducks would be hosting. They're set to host a first-round game. I have no idea how they pick bowl games after that, but they're the 5 seed right now, and I love it. Love the route. Go Ducks, baby. That's all I got to say. Bruce, before we get out of here, I have to ask for a Thanksgiving scouting report from you. I know you've had your food opinions have been, unique, I would say. So talk to me about Thanksgiving. Did we just go completely traditional? What was good? What wasn't good? Talk to me.
Okay, so Thanksgiving was different for me this year than it normally is because I couldn't go. Most of my family is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's normally where I go over for Thanksgiving. So I'll give you my normal scouting report there. Is my uncle has homemade red chili that he makes, and I just dump it on my plate. My entire Thanksgiving plate is simply a vessel for the red chili sauce. So it is all over my turkey, my stuffing, everything is red chili covered, and I love that.
So when we
This
say
year,
red chili, just to clarify, we're not talking about like chili. We're talking about like a sauce.
yeah. Red chili, like green chili, red chili. Everybody knows, like,
I was
yeah,
gonna say I know green chili. I'm not super familiar with red chili, so okay.
yeah. That's the good stuff in New Mexico. If you ever find yourself, this is a tangent, but if you ever find yourself in New Mexico, get a breakfast burrito, get it Christmas style, where it's red chili and green chili smothered, and it's the greatest thing ever. Everything over there has chilies, so I love it.
Okay, love that. All right, so you're just dumping red chili on a traditional Thanksgiving in New Mexico.
Yeah. Everything else on my plate, I pretty much do some of everything. I'm not really a gravy guy. That's where I love the red chili, because the red chili is on everything as kind of the substitute for gravy. But my grandma also makes some fruit salad that I really enjoy.
Is this
So
like
I
a
have
Jello fruit salad, or what are we doing here?
no, not Jello. It's like whipped cream along with like the apples and the tangerines and all the regular things. It's really good. So I'm a big time eater on Thanksgiving. I eat a lot of food, as I'm sure everybody else does, but I go crazy, especially with the red chili.
Are you a turkey guy?
I'm not crazy about turkey by itself, but it's great as a vessel for the red chili.
Okay. And then you said this year was different though, because you didn't go back to New Mexico.
Yeah, I was at a friend's house here because I was stuck in Long Beach. I say stuck like it's super negative, but the Big West Women's Volleyball Championships were happening right here. So I was broadcasting that. So I couldn't go over there. But family friend was gracious enough to have me and my family at their place. Had some prime rib. I ate a stupid amount of prime rib along with turkey. A lot of mac and cheese. I had a lot of mac and cheese. They had some Brussels sprouts that had some bacon bits in it. That was fantastic. Mashed potatoes. I ate more food on Thanksgiving this year than I ever have in my life.
You just named, kudos to you. First of all, I had prime rib, fantastic. Mac and cheese, Brussels sprouts, sign me up for all those things. So I'm going to say, Bruce, this was a really good food segment for you right here. It hasn't always been the case. Sometimes it's been kind of, I haven't tried that. I haven't heard of that, but I like this. Prime rib, Brussels sprouts, mac and cheese, red chili sauce on everything. I like this. It's good for you.
I've been waiting for a better performance because I know that, like, I have decent baseball opinions, but I've been needing to prove myself a little bit with the food. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction.
Okay, I'm going to give you one more chance to redeem yourselves. Have you seen
completely screw myself over?
Have you seen any of the Mighty Ducks movies?
No.
My gosh, what is wrong with Moreno and you? It's an incredible franchise. I can't believe you people haven't seen it.
I've
You're
heard
young
about
enough,
them.
at least.
Yeah, and I'm a hockey fan too, but I have no excuse.
Yeah, you have no excuse. It's fantastic. You got to watch it. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah, Ryan says at least Bruce might be too young. That's fair. It was before your time. Moreno has no excuse. It's like shocking to me that he hasn't seen it. Yeah. Anyways,
I want to say real quick too. I've seen Roseman Carino. He's said a few times saying,
yeah, I think it's a girl, Rose Marino. I think.
Oh, thank you, Rose. Sorry, it's the YouTube name thing. Thank you for the good luck. I've seen that.
Good luck on your finals, Bruce. Next week.
Yeah, they're getting started now. They're scattered around, but I'm almost out of here. So
yeah, our guy Scott Gehrman. These clowns need to respect Gordon Bombay. Dang right. A lot of cake eaters around here, Scott, if you ask me. So unbelievable stuff. That is Bruce Kuntz, though. Good food takes from him. Bad movie takes. Good baseball takes. We'll take 2 out of 3 from most of the people on the show. You take 2 out of 3 from me every single day in those categories. Folks, we appreciate every single person in here live, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We appreciate you. Those listening after the fact via podcast, thank you as well. I know YouTube's doing like a youtube.com/recap. It's kind of like their version of Spotify Wrapped. If Dodger Blue is in your top 5, top 3, top 1, whatever, top like 1% of listeners, tag us in it. Post it on social media. Tag us on Twitter. That would be fun. I've seen a couple people send those, and it's just fun to see what other shows you're listening to or watching alongside of ours. So we appreciate you guys for doing that. Scott Gehrman in the chat mentioning he will be live on Unplugged tomorrow at noon. I will be back on Thursday with Anthony Witrato as well. So enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. As always, go Dodgers. And yes, still champs.